This podcast is sponsored by FortuneFavours.ie. FortuneFavours.ie is a home workout equipment store and your one-stop shop for all home gym equipment. They are well known for their adjustable dumbbells, which combine 15 different weights in one dumbbell. They have both 24 kg and 40 kg adjustable dumbbells. Check the link in the bio of this episode for more information. So you're all very welcome along to yet another episode of the GAA Statsman podcast, and I'm your host Matthew Hurley here, joined by GAA Fan TV host Aaron Prendergast, just to review the hurling action for this weekend. In the next episode of the podcast, we'll view the football for this weekend. Obviously, there was football last weekend. This is the first week of the hurling, so very interesting weekend in store. Just to remind you all, we are sponsored today by FortuneFavours.ie as usual. If you use the code STATSMAN11 at checkout, you can get 11% off the best gym equipment around. So that's STATSMAN11, all caps, and you get 11% off. So first of all, Aaron, how are you? The football started last weekend, the hurling this weekend. I see the tweet from Colin Pairc and talking about the various leagues and stuff in hurling over the last few weeks. And it's a bit of a weird situation for going into the hurling, because most of the teams, as far as I can gather anyway, don't really care about the league.
Yeah, it's a strange one, all right. I suppose first of all, cheers Matthew for having me on your show. Great to be on. Yeah, as you were saying there, with the hurling league, it's kind of a weird one, all right. I think a lot of supporters as well aren't really that interested. Even myself, I'm kind of I didn't get around to doing a preview on my own show this week, but I don't even know if there's a huge interest there really in the hurling league. I think maybe towards the end of the league it starts to get maybe a bit interesting, around the semi-finals or the final. Last year, when Waterford played Cork, I think it was, in the final, it was a fairly interesting final, and obviously a great moment and a great day for Waterford. But when you look back at Waterford's season, I doubt as many fans at the end of the year that were thinking, "Oh, it was a great year, we won the league," because obviously they got knocked out of the championship in the round robin. So it's kind of a strange one, all right. And the further because in the league, obviously you have a semi-final and then a final. It means you have to play way more games leading up to the Munster round robin, which leads obviously to more risk of injuries and I guess a bit of a burnout with what we've seen from Waterford last year. So, maybe actually the best approach is to kind of treat it like how Limerick have treated it, where, you try out some of your under 20 players, your young players, your club players, kind of slowly phase your senior players back in. But generally speaking, it's going to be more of a just getting a pre-season competition, because obviously a lot of these teams as well, they've no real risk of relegation, and even if they do go down, they'll just bounce back straight up anyway. So, it's a strange one with the league, but at the same time, it will be interesting to see the new managers and some of the new players and some new storylines potentially developing.
Suppose so. And when you look at the hurling, I was thinking about this last night, when you look at the 12 teams, there's 3 teams that are at risk of relegation, probably Antrim, Laois and Westmeath. You then have a team that don't care whatsoever in Limerick. And then you have teams that are under new management, under a bit of a transition. You look at Cork, Kilkenny, Tipperary, Waterford, and of course your own county, Dublin. And then I think there's 3 teams that could easily go for the league to get a trophy on the board, specifically probably Galway, Clare and Wexford particularly do well in the league usually in the last few seasons. So do you think it'll be the same way this year as I just explained it there?
Yeah, I think it could be all right. I suppose, because even looking at when you look at the league tables as well, just looking at them here, looking at Division 1A, you've got Westmeath, who are probably a fairly obvious pick to be in the relegation playoff, and then in 1B, you probably have Laois, maybe Antrim. So it is, as you said, probably one of them scenarios really where for the likes of Tipperary, for the likes of Limerick, Galway, Kilkenny, who are in Division 1A, there's no huge risk there. Even if they lose 3 or 4 games, it's not that big of a deal, because they will avoid relegation. They're gonna be, Antrim, Laois or Westmeath, depending on what division you're in. So and it probably is one of them things as well where, which teams have the greatest panels, which teams have the greatest squad depth. Kilkenny have got a huge amount of hurlers to pick from, up in, all around Kilkenny. So they're usually quite strong in the league. I think Limerick do have a lot of very, very good under 20 players, but it's probably just been one of them where, they've lost a couple of games, and Kylie probably just looked at it and thought, look, let's just warm up for the main competition, and then it's probably a tournament maybe where some teams can prove themselves. Like Waterford last year really needed silverware, so they went out and got it. And maybe for the likes of Cork this year, like the league could be quite important because they want to get a major trophy on the board. Especially for the Munster counties as well, because when you think about it, like Limerick are probably going to win the Munster title and the All Ireland. Let's be honest. So for the other 4 Munster counties in there, obviously because there's no Kerry, like it's a massive opportunity for either one of them 4 to pick up a piece of silverware, which at this moment in time for a lot of the Munster counties, it's very hard for them to pick up any silverware. So definitely for the likes of the Munster counties anyway, especially with new managers coming in, it's the perfect competition to target. But at the same time, you can't blame any managers for really not treating this that seriously.
Exactly. So I suppose we'll get into the games anyway. The first game at the weekend is on at 2 o'clock in Pairc in Belfast between Antrim and Kilkenny. Coincidentally, two club sides from the respective counties played the All-Ireland Club final a few weeks ago in Dunloy, Cullens against Ballyhale Shamrocks. Again, Ballyhale won in the end with no controversy like the Kilmacud and Glen game. I think it's gone in under the radar tiny bit there. But it is on at 2 o'clock on BBC iPlayer or BBC Northern Ireland, wherever is your preference. So yeah, it's an interesting game here. Like Antrim, it's a home fortress really, Pairc, but for Kilkenny under new management and Derek Ling, like first of all, it's going to be weird not seeing Brian Cody on the sideline.
Yeah, it is. Like, and I think that's the big sort of major storyline maybe to take away from this one, is the fact that you won't have Brian Cody on the sideline. I think it's going to take a bit of getting used to. Really, it's nearly like watching a completely new team or something, because I think, like, for myself in my entire lifetime, I don't remember any other manager managing Kilkenny, and obviously same for you, and probably same for a lot of people who are listening to this as well. So, and I think for Derek Ling, like he'll want to put his own stamp on it though at the same time. And like even looking at it, like the under 20 championship, like I remember Billy Drennan looked very good from a Kilkenny perspective. I think he might have been in and around top scorers or sort of around that range. Like I remember him shooting the lights out at different times. He could be a very young, up and coming player to potentially watch coming in for this Kilkenny side. And then I suppose from an Antrim point of view, as you said there, like a lot of those lads playing for Dunloy, and obviously a lot of the Kilkenny lads playing for Kilkenny as well, or playing for Ballyhale Shamrocks as well. But the thing probably is that Kilkenny have more sort of depth in their squad, whereas Antrim probably don't. So it will be interesting to see if the likes of Keelan Malloy and Kieran Clark and these lads actually, feature for Antrim. But at the same time, like in Corrigan Park as well, it's always a fortress. So yeah, it should be an exciting game.
What do you expect to go this year from Antrim? Because a lot of people are thinking they'll go down and things like that. They won the Joe McDonagh Cup last year, and despite Kerry putting up a late fight back, but how do you think Antrim will actually perform this season? Leach are obviously gone for the Leinster Championship. You have Westmeath there now, who are making the strides themselves, and we'll see how they get on in Division 1A in the league. But like, how do you think Antrim will do? Do you think they'll stay up comfortably this year, or will they still be in a relegation battle come Championship?
Yeah, like it's a hard one, all right. Like I suppose when you're looking at it, like I mean, especially when it comes around to Championship, like it's going to be between them and Westmeath. I think realistically in the Leinster Championship, and I suppose if they can, like, because Westmeath obviously, like they'll be looking to kick on a bit as well. Like they obviously they drew at Wexford, quite a close-ish enough to actually beating Dublin as well, and competed very well with Kilkenny. So it's going to be tough for Antrim, all right. Like I think you're just kind of looking at it, and it might. But I think they normally play. Do they play a playoff with the Joe McDonagh winners?
I'm not sure though. I think there was something with the Kerry. If Kerry got through, they would have played Tipperary, but I don't think it happens for Leinster counties at all. So
yeah. So like it's really going to be down to that game between themselves and Westmeath. Realistically, like I think because Corrigan Park, it is a tough place to go. But I do think teams are a lot more aware of what happened, obviously, since since they beat Clare and drew at Wexford a couple of years ago. But like they do have a couple of good up and coming players. And hurling's obviously very strong in Antrim at the minute. Like, it'd be great to see Conor McCann sort of break more back into the side as well. And some very, very good hurlers. So like it'll be tough for them, but like between themselves and Westmeath, it's one of them. Like they've played Westmeath a lot of times in the Joe McDonagh themselves, and there's very little between them a lot of the time. So But yeah, it'd be interesting to see sort of how they approach the league as well. I think playing Division One as well, like really helps them prepare for some big tests. So it'd be interesting to see how they approach this game.
And do you think Kilkenny are gone in under the radar a small bit? Because I know they have new manager in Derek Lane, but you look at the Ballyhale players coming in, like Owen Cody's an exceptional player, TJ Reid. You still have Walter Walsh in and around the panel as well. You have Joey Holden in the back line. You have Mikey Butler, who's Young Player of the Year last season. You have Owen Murphy, probably one of the best goalkeepers in the country. So for that reason, and considering they pushed Limerick all the way in that All-Ireland final, and they had, I think, on the day, they had 14 different scores as well, which was incredible in its own right. So do you think Kilkenny, in many people's eyes, are gone in under the radar?
Yeah, I think they probably are in some respects. Like I think a lot of people are maybe nearly dismissing them in some ways because of the fact that Brian Cody isn't there, and because Brian Cody, I suppose, in more ways than one, really did work his wonders, like with Kilkenny, with the fact that the amount of All Irelands he won, but not only that, the fact that Kilkenny were so close to Limerick last year. So there probably is maybe a general consensus that you know, like I think a lot of people look at when Ferguson left Man United and everything else, and sort of the follow on from that, the man to replace him and everything else, but you only have to look at Tyrone, for example, when Mickey Hart stepped away. Now, no, maybe it's a little bit different given the fact that Brian Cody had led Kilkenny to an All Ireland. I don't think people would have been disappointed in Kilkenny at all if he had stayed on. Whereas maybe there had been a feeling amongst Tyrone supporters that it was time for someone like Mickey Hart to step away. But yeah, I think Derek Lynn coming in, he's maybe not like a huge high profile name. Even by Kilkenny standards, like he probably doesn't have the same name as a Henry Shefflin or the same name as an Eddie Brennan, for example. But look, he's been there, like he's been part of Brian Cody's setups. He's been, in the backroom team. He knows the tactics. Like realistically, I don't actually expect too much to change, really. I'm sure Derek Ling will want to maybe put his own stamp on it and bring maybe a few new players into the side. But yeah, like I think when it comes to the business end of the championship, like I think Limerick are the front runners, but I think there's probably a group of counties underneath Limerick, like Kilkenny, Clare, Cork, Galway. I think that are all sort of in the bracket of a chance. But yeah, like I certainly wouldn't be ruling out Kilkenny of doing that special this year.
And in a word, who do you think will win this game? Will Antrim pull off a shock in Cork and Pairc, or do you think Kilkenny will keep going as they left off from last season after putting in some decent performances?
Yeah, like I think this could be one of them games where maybe at half time there's only 2 or 3 points in it, and you're sort of looking at it and thinking, Antrim are doing quite well here, like they're competing quite well. But I think the further the game goes on, the further Kilkenny will pull away. Like they had a very good under 20 team last year. There's a lot of good lads to come into the side, like Billy Drennan, like I mentioned before. And I think the more the game goes on, they'll make a couple of changes, and I think they probably will win by probably 7 or 8 points in the end. Which probably wouldn't be the worst result for Antrim either. I think the main thing for Antrim really in this one will probably just be to stay in the game as much as possible, because the last thing they'd want is to get hiding in the opening day of the league and for Kilkenny to be 10, 15 points up at half time. But as you were saying as well, like the Dunloy lads will take a lot of confidence from how they competed against Ballyhale. And a lot of those Dunloy lads could play in this game, but a lot of the Ballyhale lads mightn't play. So that might maybe give them a bit of confidence. But in saying that, I think I would expect Kilkenny to win by 7 or 8 points.
Yeah, I'd probably go the same margin. I'd probably go around the same margin, to be honest with you. I think Kilkenny are a decent side. Maybe going under the radar, and you look at Antrim. I think they'll stay up. I think they'll do well against Westmeath. But yeah, for this game particularly, I think Kilkenny would just have too much. The next game is in Division 1B on the Saturday. Is Tipperary against Laois on Semple Stadium at 5 o'clock. Like, this is a weird game in many ways. Like, Tipperary also bring in Liam Cahill as a new manager. Like, that's an inspired appointment. But when you look at their performances last year, it was near on dreadful for Tipperary standards, particularly. And Laois got relegated for the All Ireland Championship, losing heavily to Westmeath that last game. And now they're the Joe McDonagh Cup this year under new management themselves as well. So, yeah, I'd say it's a bit of a downer, this game, don't you think?
Yeah, like it's probably a bit of a strange one, all right. Like it is probably maybe going to be a bit of a weird atmosphere nonetheless. But again, I suppose with Tipperary and obviously their new manager coming in Liam Cahill, and we know obviously the great work that he done with the Tipperary under 20s, winning All Ireland, and of course, obviously his work with Waterford leading them to an All-Ireland final and also a league title. So it'd be interesting to see Liam's approach, because definitely with Waterford last year, they were really, really strong in the league, as we very well know. And I think, especially with Liam Cahill, and you look at how he sets up there, so it's all about consistency and it's all about standards and sort of starting the right way and building from that. So that's why I think Tipperary might be a real strong case of winning the league, to be honest with you. Especially when you look at some of the young lads that, have been on the fringes in the last couple of years, and some of the very good hurlers they have already, in the likes of Jason Ford, and, Shamey Callan could potentially be back from injury now and possibly make a bit of a feature for this Tipperary side. And although there have maybe been a few retirements and players leaving, like, they have a great bunch of young players coming through the ranks at the moment. And yeah, like, I think from for a Tipperary perspective, it's a massive opportunity. But for Laois as well, like, I mean, obviously the likes of Patrick Purcell's been very good there the last couple of seasons. James Duggan, I remember, is a player that I've been hearing about for a good few years for Laois, sort of up and coming, hasn't really made an impact into the senior team, but he might maybe be a player to watch this weekend, because I would expect him to make some sort of feature for the Laois side. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but you would fully expect Tipperary to come through and get the win.
You probably would, yeah. It's a weird one in Tipperary. They performed absolutely terribly last season, the Munster Championship particularly. But then you look at the young players they have. Mark Kehoe, who's a brilliant goal scorer. You have Jake Morris there. You have Garrod O'Connor for the UL team, who's an excellent player as well. You have Craig Morgan, I think, is injured at the moment, but still a very good player. You have Hogan in goal, still very good. Shane McCandlin coming back into the team as well. You have Noel McGrath there. You have Liam McGrath. So there is quality in this Tipperary team, and you have a quality manager in Liam Cahill. So do you think this is kind of a year where Tipperary will shock everybody?
I think it could be all right, because, like, I was even doing some stats on the under-20 championship last year and just looking at some top scorers, and I know Cole Shelley was another one as well who looks very good for Tipperary, so he might be one to possibly make a bit of a breakthrough. So yeah, like, I think Tipperary are maybe going under the radar quite a bit, to be honest. Like, I fully expect them to, have sort of brushed off the cobwebs from last year. And, like, if I was a betting man, I'd look at Tipperary not at winning an All Ireland, but maybe getting to a semi-final or final. Like, I think it's weird putting them in the bracket as a surprise package, because, they're one of the most successful counties of all time. I think they're the second most successful county maybe in history of hurling. They're up there with Cork and Kilkenny anyways. So having them as a surprise package seems a little bit strange, but, like, you look at the talent levels that they have and the young players, like you mentioned, like Jake Morris has been sensational the last couple of years, and you've a lot of very, very good players there. So yeah, I think Tipperary, there's a lot to be excited for there. And I think with Liam Cahill coming in, he's definitely the perfect man to hopefully lead these young players towards success.
I think it's pretty obvious that Tipperary will win this game anyway. I agree with you. Tipperary
Mm.
will win this game. But just a little word on Laois, because I look at their young players. You talk about James Duggan, I'm doing Sigurdsson, or sorry, Fitzgibbon Cup stats at the moment. I think he's one of the main scorers for one college anyway. Tomas Keys is doing very well for SETU. Carlo as well. You have Paddy Purcell, you have Stephen Picky Marr there. And let's not forget, Laois reached an All Ireland quarter final in 2019, and they pushed Tip really all the way in that as well. So, like, where has it gone wrong for Laois over the last few seasons, do you think? Like, they've excited players, there's no doubt, but do you think the loss of Eddie Brennan perhaps has derailed Laois a small bit?
Yeah, like, I think with Eddie Brennan, they were always very organised as well, and they were very set up defensively. They didn't concede too much. And then they had this knack of shocking teams, like obviously when they beat Dublin a couple of years ago. So they probably do have they probably were very well coached under Eddie Brennan. In fairness, and obviously things probably went a little bit sour in terms of how that finished and everything else. But yeah, like, I think from a Laois perspective, there, as you said, they've a lot of, a good few sort of players coming through. But I think maybe what probably hurt them as well is, like, it can't be easy when you are playing in the Leinster Championship and you're getting beat week in, week out. Like, it's very hard to build confidence, when you're losing games. And I actually think them going down to the John McDonough Cup, I think that will benefit them this year, because they'll be able to win games. They'll be targeting games for wins, and possibly get a trophy. And, I think the main reason why that Laois side beat Dublin in 2019 was because of their John McDonough Cup success. And they were very competitive with Tipperary, obviously, in the quarterfinals as well. So, you do see that with teams coming up from the John McDonough. There's confidence there, like, they don't fear anything. Where when you're getting a hiding week in, week out, as Laois were a lot of the time, like, that has to take a massive effect on confidence. And lads not wanting to maybe, play and everything else. So, yeah, like I think it's a strange one because you don't want to go up to the Leinster Championship and get relegated, but you kind of need to take a chance and get up there. So it is a tough one, all right. But yeah, like I think hopefully for this year anyway, with a few of those young lads, they can be more competitive in these games.
Absolutely, and hopefully for Laois's sake anyway, Willie Maher, who's the new manager of the team, instills a bit of confidence into them in the Joe McDonagh Cup, and possibly they could win it and gain more confidence like they did in 2019. And we're moving on to Division 1A of this division, which, as you mentioned before, Aaron, there's 5 clear, very good sides, and then you have Westmeath, of course, in that division. I'm sure Westmeath will do well in this division, but they're probably favourites to go down indeed. But you look at the 5 p.m. throw, and first of all, live at TG Carr from Chadwick's Wexford Park, Wexford against Galway. This is an interesting tie. Like, people might seem to forget this, but Wexford drew against Galway last year. And the thing is with Wexford, they're a weird enough team, all right, because they drew against Galway, they beat Kilkenny. They should have beaten Clare on any other day. Like, they were miles ahead of Clare, I think, for the first 60 minutes, and then Clare put on a show in the last 10 minutes. But at the end of the day, they drew against Westmeath and they lost to Dublin at home. So, like, Wexford are one of them teams that they pull off very impressive results, and then the next day against the team that they kind of expect to beat, they flop.
Yeah, like it is a strange one, all right. Because I remember last year, like they lost at home to Dublin as well, and everyone was thinking that was a huge defeat because a lot of people were expecting Wexford and Dublin to be, competing for that third spot. And then, as you said, like they went and snatched the draw against Galway when they looked down and out at times in that game, and then obviously went to Kilkenny and beat them. So, it's a strange one for Dara Egan. Like I think he has done a very good job so far. And it probably last year probably was a bit of a transition from the Davy Fitz era. But they've a lot of very, very good hurlers. And I think last year maybe they showed that. I think the general consensus a lot of the time from neutrals is that when you don't have Lee Chin available, the standards drop. But I think last year when they didn't have him available, they still looked very good at times. So, I think for Wexford, like they're another one of those sides, maybe a bit like Tipperary, and maybe a bit like Waterford as well. Like they're a potential dark horse that could cause a surprise or two. So, like I think, yeah, like because I think like last year as well, like there was a couple of times they looked really good, but then as you said, they just looked poor. So I think consistency will be the big thing for Dara Egan this year.
When you look at Galway, then I see your video at the start of the year predicting Galway would go on and win the league, which to an extent I definitely agree. Like Clare will be up there as well, and Galway are one of them teams that need to get a trophy on the board. But you look at Galway's young players. I mentioned the Fitzgibbon Cup before. Like there's some very impressive players there. Ian McGlynn's a good one from centre back. Evan Nyland is still in that competition. He's top scorer for play and the top scorer overall as we speak as well. And also you have Brian Concannon in that team as well. So in some ways, they are missing Joe, and then Henry is implementing his stamp on the team. And then you look at the performance against Limerick in the All-Ireland semi-final last year, where another day they could have even beat the all-conquering treaty. So, like, do you think Galway will even get better this year under Henry?
I think so, yeah. Like, 'cause I think last year, like, there was a lot of question marks over them, like with the fact that obviously Joe Canning had retired, and you're thinking like, who are the players to sort of make the step up and sort of push themselves on. But no, like I think they've had a lot of very, very good players. Like as you said before, some of the young lads who sort of made the step up, the likes of Evan Nyland, the likes of Brian Concannon, I think has been a player that looks very good sort of at the start of 2021. But last year we really started to see more of the best of him out of, I think in 2021 when things went sour for Galway, performances maybe dropped a bit. But Tom Monaghan was another player I was very impressed with. Cathal Mannion, Pairc Mannion. So like they've a lot of very, very good players Galway. And I think Henry Shefflin for his first season to get them to a semi-final and get them as close as they were to beating Limerick. Like I remember when they got that goal as well in the second half, and you were thinking like it's definitely on here. They could really cause a surprise. So like I think Galway will be the closest challengers to Limerick this year, and I think with Henry Shefflin, like I think they'll be targeting the league as well. And I think they'll be the team to beat in this competition.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one with Galway. I probably would say they're the closest to Limerick as well. A lot of Clare fans thinking they'll be the closest to Limerick because of getting them to extra time. But Galway, it is a weird one because against Limerick, they were brilliant and all that, but they lost to Kilkenny in the Leinster final. Against Cork, like I think any Cork and Galway fan would say in that quarter final, it wasn't the fact that Galway won it. Cork lost it with the amount of wides they had. They missed 2-12 in the first half. So is that kind of a trait that compares Galway and Wexford, or makes them similar in a way that one day they're absolutely brilliant and then the next day they don't perform particularly too well?
Yeah, like in some ways they're probably two similar sides in some ways, in the sense that they both had new managers in their first season who were trying to figure things out, trying to put their own shape on it. And because it was their first, full season in charge, like you did see some inconsistencies there. And as you said there, like with the Cork game, they definitely should have been beaten that day. And it's kind of weird how you can, how one performance can change things. Like if Galway had been beat by Cork in the quarterfinals, I think there would have been a lot of negativity around Galway in the fan base, and some people saying, are they moving in the right direction? But all of us, they obviously do come through that game, and then against Limerick, like they were really really good against them, and very very competitive. So yeah, I think from a Galway perspective, and for both Wexford, they're probably two sides coming in a similar fashion. But I do think Galway overall do have the better players, so I probably would, especially with the younger players. I think their underage is a lot better, and that's why I do fancy them to turn over Wexford this weekend.
Yeah, I'd probably go Galway as well. It's a chance to, stamp their authority on this season as well. So I'll back Galway to win this game. And the final game on a busy hurling day on Saturday, live on RT2, is Cork against Limerick in Pairc. The footballers didn't do well for Cork last weekend. The hurlers will be hoping to do well. They beat Limerick in the league last season. They seem to have the better of Limerick in the league, but obviously the main reason for that, Limerick don't really care about this competition. But it's an interesting one with Cork this year under Pat Ryan as the new manager. Pat Horgan's come out during the last few weeks saying there's a happier vibe around the camp as well. So, like, it's going to be an interesting one with Cork and an interesting one with Limerick to see how much they care about this competition.
100%, yeah. Like it is a strange one, all right. I think if anyone's predicting this during the championship, they're going with Limerick. But I think as of right now for the league, I think most people will go with Cork. So you just don't really know like what sort of Limerick are going to turn up. Like I seen a lot of the team was away in Dubai, I think, like a couple of weeks ago, like and doing training over there. So you can't imagine that a lot of those players will be there. But in saying that, I think Limerick were what in an under-20 All-Ireland final last year. So there's bound to be some players that are potentially going to come in, from that side. Maybe the likes of Aidan O'Connor, who looked impressive at different times. Could he maybe make a bit of an impact for this Limerick side? So, yeah, but I would agree with you as well. I think with Cork and they've plenty of young talent. I think the big thing for Pat Ryan really, I think, will be to put the sort of the pieces of the jigsaw together, because there's a lot of great players there. It's just a matter of putting them all together. Like a big fan of Alan Connolly, Dara Fitzgibbon as well, I think has been outstanding. And obviously, where does Pat Horgan fit in? Because I suppose me and you have had the conversation before in terms of, does he start, does he not? And there's probably maybe a bit of a split amongst Cork fans in terms of what they actually want. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what sort of spin Pat Ryan puts on this Cork side this year.
That is an interesting point about Patrick Horgan. I actually brought it up after the league final, and a lot of Cork fans were coming for blood after that comment. But like, there is a reason behind that. Like Patrick Horgan, let's not forget, he's 33, 34 years of age now. Like he's moving on to the latter stages of his career. They have young players, as you mentioned, Alan Connolly, Jack O'Connor's coming back into form as well. He scored a goal, I think, in the Munster League final, and he did well for UCC in the Fitzgibbon Cup. So he's coming back into form. And you see the form that Jack O'Connor was on in that 2020 run to the All-Ireland final, especially the game against Kilkenny. He was absolutely incredible in that All-Ireland semi-final. Then you also have Seamus Harvey, who's an experienced player, but has performed, I think, better than Horgan in the last few seasons. Maybe an unpopular opinion there. You have Conor Cahalane, who did well for St. Finbarrs. You have Brian Hayes, obviously left the footballers and he's come into the hurler, so like you may as well use him now. You also, as you mentioned there, Alan Connolly. You have Cormac Bosan coming in from Middleton as well. So like there's a plethora of Cork players there. Dara Fitzgibbon as well, Ethan Tooby coming in from the Bars as well. So like there's unreal players all over the team. And then you have a manager who won 2 under-20 titles in a row, All-Ireland titles. So like the signs look good for Cork, but we've said this all before, and Cork fall flat on their face. And added to the fact as well, they're encountering one of the greatest sides we've ever seen as well. So it's going to be still tough.
Yeah, like I think from a Pat Ryan perspective, from a Cork perspective, like you'd nearly want to not just beat Limerick, but maybe actually put a bit of a beating on them, like beat them by 10, 15 points. And I know that sounds kind of a bit mental, but like you're playing them in the opening day of the league, like just go hell for leather, strong as possible, and just put out a statement sort of victory. It was bound to build a lot of confidence, as you said. It may, I think a lot of supporters would maybe look at it and think, you can't really take it too seriously because Limerick aren't anywhere near their absolute best, but it would still build a lot of confidence. And as you said there, like there's so much talent, and be interesting to see what way Shane Kingston fits into it as well. Like we've seen obviously under Kieran Kingston, he wasn't always starting, and he was coming off the bench and everything else. And whether that was just a father son thing, I really don't know. But I think like I think you'd have to say like he was Cork's best hurler last year, and probably has been for the last couple of years. So I think it'll be interesting to see what way they fit him into the side as well.
Yeah, it would be very interesting. Like Shane Kingston's probably one of the best hurlers that Cork have at this moment of time as well. But Limerick's going to be an interesting one because you don't know who's going to start. You look at Aaron Gillan, will he start? Ciad Lynch, will he recover? Conor O'Neill, will he stamp his authority on the team? But then you look at the young players coming through as well. Aidan O'Connor was impressive for the under-20s last season. Adam English the same. You look at Shane O'Brien as well from Kilmallock, very, very good forward as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what team Limerick put out.
Yeah, like I think as you said there, like Adam English, you'll definitely see him making an impact into the side. And as you said, Cathal O'Neill, like I think he was probably one of the big standout players from the under-20s in the last sort of year or two. And he's been a great addition, sort of coming off the bench and when he started as well. So yeah, like you'd probably look at sort of the fringe players to probably make a bit of a start. The likes of Cathal O'Neill, as you said, Adam English, Aidan O'Connor potentially. Maybe some changes in around the midfield as well. Like it would be interesting. Like you probably will see one or two of the All Ireland winners in there. But again, it's one of those things I think for John Coyley where he looks at the league almost as a pre-season sort of competition, and it's very hard to judge them. You can never really get carried away. Like I know sort of, I think when Buff Egan was seeing Limerick get beat week in, week out in the league, he got a bit excited and thought they wouldn't get out of the Munster Championship. But that's how it's been for the last 2 years. But in saying that, like John Coyley has won the league with Limerick before. I think they won it in 2020, I think it was. So it's an interesting one how we'll probably approach it. But you would expect a lot of rotation there.
Yeah, definitely so. But who do you think will win this game? So I suspect you're going for Cork in this game, and I'm going for Cork as well. I think they'll beat them pretty handily. Maybe it'll be a bit of a boring game in many ways. Both sides Cork will be trying out new players. Limerick probably the same as well. So do you think Cork will get over the line at home?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be 6 or 7. I do think Limerick will do better in the league this year. Like I think they will improve. Like they won't be just down to one win where they beat Westmeath or whoever it is. I think there will be other wins in there, but I think there will probably be inconsistencies. And I think going away to Cork, the rivalry that's there, the fact that it's Pat Ryan's first game, it's probably a very tough game to have, to be honest. And I do think Cork will probably be one of the stronger sides in the league. So yeah, I'd go with Cork to win by 6.
Definitely so. And yeah, it should be a very interesting game on Saturday night. And speaking of Westmeath, they're away to Clare this weekend at Cusack Park at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Yeah, it's an interesting one because Clare under Brian Lohan, like he's been there a long time now at this stage. They made some serious strides last year, obviously getting that great Limerick team all the way to extra time. They have good young players coming through like Robin Mounsey. Mark Rogers is coming back from injury as well. You have Aidan McCarthy hopefully coming back into the team. Like Clare are some very good young hurlers coming through, and Westmeath made some very good strides as well. So both sides coming off the back of a decent 2022.
Yeah, definitely, and Mark Rogers obviously as well. Like he's another one who's looked very good sort of in the Fitzgibbon Cup, but has obviously struggled a little bit with injuries. So yeah, like I think this is realistically like a wonderful chance for Clare like to do something special this year with some of the players that they do have. Like obviously since getting Duggan back, from obviously when he was away in Australia, we all know the talent levels of Tony Kelly. But the same thing is as well, the likes of Peter Duggan, the likes of Tony Kelly, like these lads are getting on a bit at the same time though, and there is, there probably is a bit of a clock ticking for some of these lads as well in terms of like I don't think they're going to retire anytime soon or anything like that. I think they're obviously going to be there this season and they'll probably be there next season as well. But just there is that sort of thing where while they have as good as a team as they have, I think they need to sort of capitalise on. As you said, there is good underage players coming through, like Mark Rogers and a few others, like you mentioned. Obviously, Aidan McCarthy now is obviously coming back into the fold, which is good to see. And it's interesting because like their underage hasn't been too successful. Like they haven't really done much at under 20 or minor level in the last couple of years. And I remember Cork gave them an absolute trimming one year, by about 30 odd points. I think it might have been at minor or under 20 level. So it's interesting that they're still finding players to come through, even though they probably haven't been doing too well, sort of as a group. So yeah, and I think this is a perfect game against Westmeath, like to probably try out a couple of the younger players, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity for Westmeath to possibly cause an upset.
He's definitely like another player that I forgot to mention as well, Shane Meehan. I think he scored like a hat trick in a junior game as well, and I think he's still only 18 or 19 years of age. Very, very good player coming through the ranks as well. And a word on Westmeath, like they've Joe Fortune in for another year this year. They've some very good players coming through. Killian Doyle, very good player. I think Niall O'Brien is a very good player as well. They drew against Wexford obviously last year, and they provided Laois with an absolute hammering in the Leinster Championship as well. So do you think Westmeath will actually perform better than last year? Is there a potential to do that?
Yeah, I think so. Like it's an interesting one because a lot of the time when we see teams go up to go up to the Leinster Championship and go up to Division 1, they sort of like they start well and they do all right sort of around the beginning, but then once they start to get one or two hammerings, it just sort of goes downhill from there. Like I remember when Carlow were in the Leinster Championship a good couple of years ago, like they were fairly competitive, like, and they actually put it up to Kilkenny, put it up to Dublin. They got relegated in the end, but you definitely got the feeling that their heads could be held high with how they competed, and they've just never recovered really from that. So it is a strange one, all right, but yeah, like a lot, like Westmeath were obviously in Division 1 a couple of years ago, I think 2021, and things didn't go too well then. I remember they got hammered by Galway and did a few sort of disappointing results. So again, it's a hard one really, but at the same time, the opening sort of weekend is always a great opportunity because you will catch teams cold. I mean, Antrim beating Clare in the opening weekend of the league as a result that stands out. And will Clare go full strength? Probably not. You probably won't see Tony Kelly in this game or any of them lads. Maybe you will, but you just get the feeling that they might be, rested for further down the line. So it's a huge opportunity for Westmeath, no doubt.
Definitely is, yeah. But do you think Westmeath will pull off a similar shock that Antrim did a few seasons ago against Clare, or do you think Clare will just have enough to win this game?
Yeah, like I'd kind of nearly love to predict the draw just for the laughs, really. But to be honest, I just think with Clare's younger lads, even like I think they do have even with the fact they might rotate, I think they still have a good couple of lads coming in there, and they kind of proved last year that although when Tony Kelly's on it, they're 100 times better. But they do have other lads that are, chipping in, the likes of Shane O'Donnell, a few other lads doing well. Aaron Shanahan's not a bad player as well. So, yeah, I do think Clare will come through, but I do think it'll be closer to what people think, and it might only be 2 or 3 points.
Maybe so. Like I remember Westmeath actually put it up to Waterford one season as well. I think that was the same season that Antrim beat Clare. But then the next week, Cork scored 7 goals past them as well. So you don't know with this Westmeath team, but I think Clare should have enough. Like they've good youngsters coming through. They will be given a chance, and Brian Lowe will be looking for a second good season under his belt to Clare. And the final game in Division 1 of the weekend is on TG Carr, the forward coverage. It's Waterford against Dublin in Field at 2:30. Like, interesting game, both sides under new management. Well, Waterford have a returnee in many ways in Davy Fitz coming back, and coincidentally, Davy Fitz was the last manager to win a Munster title with Waterford. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. Obviously, he had his first game against the underdogs, where that was a hammering in its own right. But Dublin under Micheal Donoghue, I'm sure he'll be paying close attention to that. So, should be an interesting game.
Yeah, like it definitely should be. Like 2 new managers going in there, and I think I'm very excited to see sort of, what Micheal Donoghue can bring to this Dublin team. Like there's been a lot of like good players who've been on the fringes or like been in and around the squad the last couple of years, but maybe haven't made the step up. And even looking at Kilmacud Crokes this year, like Alex Considine looks like a very, very good player. I think he's a potential to really cause a lot of problems for defenses this year. Dara Purcell's been another who's done well with the under-20s. And even if you look at some other sort of younger lads like Dara Gray, who's kind of been in and out of the team, looked very good in 2021, but didn't feature too much last year. And you still have experienced heads in there like Owen O'Donnell, in that full back, and he's obviously staying on with the hurlers, which is good to see, and committing to the hurlers, which I think is good to see. And of course then Danny Sutcliffe and a few other lads to come in and make an impact. So yeah, like Dublin, they have a lot of very good players in and around the county. Club level's always very strong. I think for me, Micheal Donoghue will just be about managing that transition now from the sort of older lads and really sort of focusing now on some of the younger lads, the likes of Alex Considine and Darrell Purcell. And I think getting the best out of Ronan Hayes, I think, is critical as well, because you see when he's on it, he's a phenomenal player, but probably just hasn't been consistent enough really for Dublin. And even though Kilmacud Crokes at times this year, he was a little bit quiet. So trying to get the best out of him, I think, will be critical from a Dublin perspective. But I think it's a nice game to play with Waterford. I think it's a game we can definitely beat, team we can definitely beat. And I think the league, we have caused a few good wins here and there. So it'll be interesting, no doubt, to see how we approach this one.
It's going to be interesting with Dublin, all right, because like you have some very good players like Alex Considine, you mentioned there, a load of Kilmacud players like Oshie O'Rourke, I was impressed with in the club championship as well. You have very good players all over the field. Rory Hayes is another one that performs well in a few games and then goes missing in another few games. Is another big player. Sean Curry is the one that I think is absolutely outstanding for the Fianna, if that's his name. He's an incredible hurler. I think he scored like 10 points from play in the Dublin final one year, and he was incredible. So, like, you have these very good players for Dublin. So do you think Micheal Donoghue is the right man to take on the mantle to gel these brilliant talents together?
I think so, yeah. Like, and even another player who caught the eye during the Walsh Cup as well was Andrew Jameson Murphy, who looked very good for Na Fianna at different times this year as well. Like, so he's another one that could catch the eye. And yeah, like it's a strange one, all right, because like Micheal Donoghue, like how much has he watched Dublin hurling down the years? Like, I know obviously he's been on the Sunday game, and he's a hurling madman. Like, I'm sure he's watching games up and down the country all the time, but like it might take a couple of years really to sort of really fully invest himself with Dublin. So I don't expect us to be, I don't expect us to cause any major shocks this year, like, get to an All-Ireland final, semi-final, or anything like that. I think the best case scenario probably for us Dublin fans is, getting out of Leinster, maybe getting to a quarter final, and seeing kind of where things go from there. But the league is a great opportunity because a lot of teams will be resting players and they will be trying different things out. And like if Dublin could get to a league semi-final or even a league final, like I think that would be huge for Dublin, and the exposure it would give to hurling in the county as well. So like I'm hoping we do treat the league seriously, but I would still expect Micheal Donoghue to sort of rotate at different times throughout the league,
Interesting one with Waterford actually, because over the last few weeks, like 2 weeks ago, we were thinking Davy Fitz is going to stamp his authority on the team, and you have good players coming through. They've won the league for a reason last year. They're incredible talents. You look at Ballygunner over the last few years, success is there, but you've had 3 exits in the last week or so. You have Pairc Manny retired. Obviously, we wish him a happy retirement. Unbelievable hurler, and hopefully he recovers from injuries with his club Ballygunner. But you also had 2 players, Ian Kenny and Mikey Manny. They might not be the glitz and glamour really, but Ian Kenny particularly was a cornerback for Waterford's run to the All-Ireland final in 2020. Mikey Manny was an excellent player for Ballygunner. So do you think them 3 losses to the Waterford team will kind of derail them a bit, or do you think Davy Fitz will still rally the troops?
Yeah, like it's an interesting one. All right. I think Ian Kenny was definitely the surprise one there. Like he's a young enough player, so in terms of him, obviously, like not making himself available, like, I think was a bit of a surprise. But I think at the same time, like yeah, from a Waterford perspective, they do have a lot of very good players up and down the country. And it might be one of them things with Davy Fitz coming in. He kind of does tend to split opinion, and there tends to be this kind of thing when he goes to counties where there will be players who don't want to play, and whether it's just Davy Fitz causing a bad first impression or because of the playing style and everything else, you just don't really know sort of what goes into it. But look, I think, I was listening to Desi Hutchinson in an interview a couple of weeks ago speaking about Davy Fitz, and it does seem like a lot of Waterford lads are happy with him coming in and they're really excited. And, I think what Davy Fitz will bring to you is commitment. I think with Liam Cahill, there probably was always this sort of cloud in the background where you sort of knew at some point he was going to go to Tipperary. So what, like, I think last year the buy-in maybe fell off a bit, when things started to turn south in the Munster Championship. But there's a lot of very good players that could be interested to see, even if Patrick Fitzgerald even makes a bit of a. I know obviously he's young enough, so he'll probably play with the under-20s, I'd suspect. But he looks very good for Ballygunner. And is it a case that you give him 1 or 2 games in the league and then he goes to play with the under-20s for the championship? But still plenty of talent. Like Desi Hutchinson, I think, is one of the best hurlers in the country on his day. Austin Gleeson, the role he'll play. So there's still a lot of very, very good players. And I think even without Pairc Matney, I still think Waterford have enough forwards there to be competitive and to be thereabouts in the league and possibly even the All Ireland as well.
Would you be confident as a Dublin fan that you win this game at least against Waterford? Like, it'll be some state of attempt if you go all the way down to Farfield and get a win here.
Yeah, I actually think we will beat them, to be honest. Like, I think with Waterford, there will be, with Ballygunner obviously going as far as they did in the All Ireland Championship, going up to the semi-finals. I think there might be a bit of rotation there. We nearly beat Waterford last year as well in the league. I think we might have drew with them, or it was thereabouts. Anyways, I know we beat Tipperary, so yeah, like I'll be confident enough that we could go there. So yeah, maybe I'll make a bold prediction and say we'll beat them by 2 points.
Very, very bold. No, I thought Waterford would have been in the obvious pick though with Davy Fitz in charge, but like he usually does well in the league, Davy Fitz. So it's gonna be tight. Going to be very tight, but I'm gonna go Waterford by a point. I think they'll just squeak it. It's going to be an interesting year for Waterford. Indeed, we'll just go over some Division 2A fixtures, just to mention it briefly, like Carlow against Kildare. And the reason I'm mentioning this because Carlow have good players, possibly up there with like Laois and Westmeath. Kildare, like Naas, reaching the Leinster semi-finals in the club championship, will give the county a huge boost. David Herity obviously still charged there. So, yeah, this has the potential to be an interesting game. Who do you see winning here?
Yeah, like I think I'd go for maybe another bold prediction, go for Kildare to pull off the victory. Like I think, yeah, like I remember when they came up to the Joe McDonagh 2 years ago, and obviously as they've sort of been rising through the ranks in Division 2 and everything else, you're sort of looking at them to be that team to cause a surprise. And 2 years ago when they were in the Joe McDonagh, it just didn't quite happen in the end. And they ended up obviously getting relegated. And now obviously they're back in the Joe McDonagh this year. But yeah, like Jack Sheridan's a very, very good hurler. Brian Byrne as well. Like they've a lot of good players there, and I think the work that's been done in Naas, I think can't go unnoticed. There's a real stronghold brewing of both football and hurling there, and I think the work that's been done, in Naas in particular, in the GAA has been outstanding. So yeah, I'd go for Kildare to pull off the win here.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go for Kildare as well. I know Carlow has some very good players. Chris Nolan in particular, I'm really impressed with Martin Kavanagh there as well. You have the St. Mullins players who played against Kilmacud recently in the Leinster Championship. But I think Kildare hurling's on the rise. I think it looks very good, like James Burke, Jack Sheridan, as you mentioned. Some very good players, Brian Bird as well. There was one particular footballer, I forget his name now, but he's come into the panel as well. So yeah, Kildare has some very good players all over the field. And another interesting game is on at 1 o'clock on Sunday in Ballycran, down against Offaly. Well, Offaly are under Johnny Kelly as a new manager, and Offaly, they did well last season. They were just pipped at the last particular moment to get it to a Joe McDonagh Cup final. They just missed out on a whisker. And Down got to the league final last season. A lot of people seem to forget that. They were obviously beaten by Westmeath in that first double hitter last season. So do you think Down will continue their league form into this season, or do you think Offaly will get a bounce off Johnny Kelly?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Down, all right, because when you were looking at it on Scorpio and when you were looking at highlights of matches and everything else, you were thinking like they are causing a lot of surprises and shocks. And it was probably disappointing maybe on Allianz League Sunday and everything else that we don't get to see them enough really, which I think is disappointing. Like it probably is a hard one to call. Like I know Paul Shields is looking outstanding for Down in the last couple of years. I think he's been one of their big players, but being honest, it's the knowledge probably isn't there to really know. But you would look at Offaly and sort of the success that's been happening at underage level, the players that have been coming through. And I think for them, like since they obviously went down to the Christie Ring a couple of years ago, the real expectation has been that they will sort of rise back up through the ranks and get back to the Leinster Championship eventually, which is the aim. So yeah, like I think Johnny Kelly, I think you'd expect him to carry on the good work of the previous management. and it's a hard one to call, but maybe Offaly slightly, but at the same time, if I seen Down won this game, that it wouldn't surprise me that much either.
Yeah, exactly. Even away from home, I think Offaly will probably win this game. Like Mike Fenley did some brilliant work with Offaly, but I think he's joined with Kilkenny now. So Johnny Kelly's taken up the mantle. But yeah, I think Offaly, they have the players. Like you look at their minor success as well against Tipperary last season. They could have easily won that game. So should be very interesting to see how they develop. And yeah, we're going to move on to the next video with football in the next episode. So for this particular episode with the hurling, leave a like, subscribe, follow GAA Statsman on Instagram, of course, subscribe to GAA Fan TV on YouTube, and on to the next video, the football video. I'll see you in the next one.